You all know Atari's ET, right? It's confusing, killed the video game industry, and is the worstest game ever. Oh no, he floats slowly. What's going on? Better write it off as the most bad experience gaming has ever produced in one of literally endless worst game ever lists, citing it as such. So let's have it then. The hot take of the century, it's not that bad. Like, honestly, it's not that bad. It's not good, but it's not that bad. It's fine. It's fine. Most of the criticism comes from the fact that the game doesn't spell out its mechanics, and it's very true that just jumping into the game without any knowledge of its design or rules will be an incredibly overwhelming experience. Pressing the one button seems to have a variety of functions and results, and the objective is very unclear. Without guidance, the game is virtually impossible to play. If only there was some kind of rule tome, a handbook of sorts, some sort of instruction manual. A game spelling out its mechanics entirely through design and in-game tutorials was something that only came about in the third and fourth generations of gaming, pioneered with the release of Super Mario Bros. To expect the same of a title in the second generation, then call it a fault when it doesn't have it, is anachronistic and just fucking silly. After reading the instructions, as you're supposed to, you discover a game reasonably complex by 2600 standards, but ultimately very simple. The objective is to collect 3 pieces of your phone, cool the spaceship, then wait in the required home zone to be collected home. The larger number is your energy, depleted when moving or performing any action, and the smaller number is your candy pieces, shown on the map via single pixels. Darker green spots are holes you can fall in, some of which contain telephone pieces, and throughout you're chased by an FBI agent who will steal telephone pieces you already have, and a scientist who will drag you to their lab for experiments. Given the controller only had one button, the game adopts a context-sensitive approach, with this symbol at the top corresponding to what action will be performed by pressing it, be it teleporting, eating candy, escaping a hole, sending the FBI agent or scientist off screen, calling Elliot to give your candy to for a higher score, scanning phone pieces within the screen, or calling your ship once you have the full phone. At which point you find the area with this icon at the top of the forest and wait for the timer to run out. Congrats, you beat the game, and are rewarded by a screen of ET waiting outside Elliot's house as he runs around it for some reason. Dude, go home, you sick son of a bitch. It's far from perfect. The map layout is incredibly confusing, with the screens being connected in some sort of cube. They put pits on the side of the screen here, which is just fucking why. And there's this glitch where escaping from a hole out the top pushes you immediately back in, which is easy to avoid, but still crummy design. But it's a fun high score chaser, and an ambitious, mostly successful project, featuring many modern aspects that don't seem much today, but were far from the norm at the time. Like a dedicated title screen with unique graphics, recognizable music, a run button, and it even features multiple difficulty levels for increased replayability. It also features one of gaming's first Easter eggs. In one pitfall each game there's a flower you can make grow. Happy face. E.T. the Extraterrestrial is a bad game, but for its time, simply mediocre, with decent sprite work, sound design, and replayability making up for its repetitive gameplay and overwhelming, glitchy challenge. But it caused the Western gaming industry to crash for 2 years! Yeah, did it though? Sure, it's satisfying to pin macro events on small-scale triggers, but that's very rarely the full story, or in this case, part of the story at all. The video game industry as of 1982 was bloated, overpriced, and a bit shit. You can place media in context all day to mark how influential or forward-thinking they were, but I don't think it's unreasonable to claim, but for the first 20-odd years of history, the standard of video games got better, and there's a point where you can look at old Atari shovelware and think, even if these are the only video games available, wouldn't you rather watch TV, or go outside, or do literally anything else? The system had the odd, sort of quality title, but they were buried by such a thick stream of inexcusable garbage that remains shit even if you make efforts with the instructions to understand what's going on. Karate, bugs, flag capture, Donkey Kong Jr. Oh my god, what happened to everyone? Custer's Revenge, Beat 'em and Eat 'em, Jesus. Basic Math, Star Wars Jedi Arena, Firefly, and Tax Avoiders, to name a few. E.T. didn't cause the video game crash, but we all know what caused the housing crisis. Cut that joke. Not to mention, the system itself cost $200, which in today's money would be nearly $850. Kind of a lot for what amounted to little more than a dumb gimmick with very little real entertainment value. And with no internet or popular gaming magazines to sort the wheat from the chaff and Atari's disinterest in pursuing actual quality control, it was a minefield for prospective customers. Looking in retrospect, the video game industry of the late 70s/early 80s was less a booming new marketplace as it was perceived by the Atari Corporation, and more a ticking time bomb which could take only a few more losses before collapsing in on itself. Shovelware was rife and virtually uncontrolled, and as the standard and audience appeal for home gaming merely as a concept went down and the company's ambitions heightened, the market didn't look to have a rich future. ET was less the atrocity that killed gaming as much as the damp squib that failed to save it, after being given the over-marketing and over-producing that some dumb company assumed would be enough to make it so. Maybe sometime after paying $21 million for the rights. In short, while the images of millions of ET copies buried in New Mexico landfill, a fact far more easily attributed to the corporation expecting some movie tie-in property to sell 5 million units despite only one other game passing that milestone, is provocative, and for people who don't know what they're talking about, seeing the game's short development time and looking at its gameplay through the lens of the modern gaming industry backed up by the seemingly airtight reassurance it killed gaming, could build impressions of some great, mythical, worst ever video game, but it actually wasn't that bad. It more just kind of existed as a product of its time and the conditions that made it, achieving no more or less than anyone could have expected. Competent and interesting, but unremarkable and markedly unpolished. And with regard to ET's history, it's kind of disturbing that conversations of its failure and the eventual failure of the bloated early gaming industry center not on the corporate greed and hubris that caused it, but on the sincere yet flawed creation of one man. Fuck you, Howard. Why'd you kill video games, Howard, you bastard? It speaks to some troubling truths of our deeply individualistic society, so desperate to find someone and something to blame it fails to see the forest for the trees. E.T. is not the worst game ever made, and who the hell cares what is? I'm just kidding, it's Tax Avoiders. Tax Avoiders is the worst video game. I forgot the point of the video. Tax Avoiders killed gaming forever.